I'm the moderator. My name's Hash. I'm the COO of Multichain Advisors. We're a management consulting firm in the Web3 space. We've helped 70 companies for the last 3 years, such as Pit and Wormhole on this panel. Why don't we start from you?
Sure, I'm happy to kick us off. Hi, everybody. My name is Katya Ternopolska. I'm the head of growth at the Wormhole Foundation. Wormhole is an interoperability protocol powering the transfer of assets, data, any information that you want to take across chain. We power over 40 networks today and going to be hopefully doubling that in the near future.
Hi, I'm Iago. I'm one of the founders of Boss. Before that, was one of the builders who built Sovereign into the largest DeFi for Bitcoin ecosystem. Before that, I started one of the first remittance companies which used Bitcoin. And one of the things that happened in that company was we helped invent Lightning Network. And before that, I was lost in life.
My name is Eric. I'm the head of ecosystem at Nibiru. We're a multi-VM layer 1 focused on structured products and DeFi. Before that, I was the president of the Blockchain Education Network, which is a global network of university clubs in blockchain that started back in 2014. And before that, I was the president of the MIT Bitcoin Club, which is how I got started when I was an undergrad. So I was part of the MIT Digital Currency Initiative, where there was a lot of research on the Lightning Network there. And then I was doing research in decentralized energy microgrids.
My name is Aditya, and I'm part of the PITS team. We are the pricing layer for off-chain and on-chain. We provide market data, prices, anything that you want of any assets. We provide on almost 100 plus chains, thanks to Wormhole, and off-chain as well nowadays.
Awesome. What a stacked panel, guys. Each of your projects contributes to a multi-chain infrastructure from different angles: messaging, oracles, and execution. What part of the stack? Are you focused on improving today, and what's the impact for devs? Why don't we start from Pit?
Okay. Impact for devs. That's so. Our main focus is like if you're building anything on blockchain. Let's keep it on chain for today. If you're building anything, you need data. And someone has to give you data. And that data, I don't want anyone, devs or any companies out there to have that doubt, is the data that we are getting verified or not? And that's the trust that we build. We give you the data, which is the most crucial data for on-chain transactions, which are prices. So we source that data from so many publishers, first-party data publishers, no CoinGecko, no CoinMarketCap, they're aggregators. We get it directly from them, and we provide to you devs. So what we are solving right now is just building trust, and so that you just focus on your application, and we give you what you need. So again, data provider, in short.
So we're focusing on innovations at the consensus layer and then on the execution layer. So on the consensus layer, we're working on some initiatives like validator clustering, where basically instead of just having every validator agree on the state, you break them up into subgroups, right? And then the validators in their local network would agree, and then that gets kicked up to the second layer. So that way you could have a more efficient, you could scale with more validators, and you could still have a very high TPS with fast finality. On the execution side, we're mainly focused on a multi-VM. So we initially started with WASM because we were in the Cosmos ecosystem, but we expanded to EVM. But we didn't want to expand in a way that was like through a sidechain or through an additional like something you'd have to bridge to. We wanted it to be a VM on the same chain that we already had, so that dApps could execute both, say, Solidity-based transactions and Rust-based transactions in the same block. And this lends to the structured product thesis that if you create these vaults, you want these vaults to be able to work with underlying dApps, and those dApps should have the flexibility to be able to be coded in the languages that would be optimized to run those kinds of applications.
One of the biggest problems that we have currently in crypto is that the largest user base and the largest asset base is unapproachable. completely dead to us. For example, Wormhole, right? Connect all of crypto, but cannot connect it to Bitcoin.
Not
You
yet.
guys are building data which you can feed to any chain, but you cannot feed to Bitcoin. You guys, some of you are developers, you can build on any chain, but you can't build on Bitcoin. And the fact that we're not able to unlock the user base, the liquidity, and the integration with the global financial world that Bitcoin provides is also introducing secondary effects of fragmenting our industry, because there's no shelling point for us to all gather around. There's no single central sort of hub of security or of network effects. And so basically the problem that we're focused on is being able to fix our ability to build on and communicate with Bitcoin, effectively giving Bitcoin eyes and a brain. And so we're not building an additional layer or an additional chain. What we're doing is we're building into Taproot transactions themselves more logic, more programmability, in fact, infinite programmability, and the ability to take any kind of compute and consume it in the form of ZK proofs. And so from this sort of platform, what we've seen is integrations with other chains, integration with data, the ability to trustlessly move funds across multiple different chains. And I think it's a new era for what we can do with crypto and the size that this industry can get to.
I mean, I'd love to also chat a little bit more about that. The regulatory environment really has not been conducive to anybody being able to connect to the traditional Bitcoin blockchain, because then you're custodying assets. Like, just unfortunately, the architecture has just made it really difficult for interoperability providers to connect to true Bitcoin. So I'm really happy to see teams like you guys building in this space to help solve that issue. But what Wormhole does is really focused on information transfer across different blockchains. The most obvious use case of that is transferring tokens. We've seen a tremendous amount of adoption in that to date. I mean, you look on chain and everybody's talking about which meme coin is, now live on Base or is trading on Solana. You look at stable coins and all of these new payments use cases that are coming online. We've been talking about payments forever, but it feels like there's this new era now where it's practical and cost efficient, and the user experience is really getting to a point where you can actually transfer this information seamlessly, trustlessly, and in a way that institutions are now getting comfortable with. So my company, my team, my protocol focuses on the best way to get information from point A to point B, whether that is through the traditional Wormhole Guardian set, which is 19 validators that we work with who line on messages that get sent, or whether it is looking at ZK knowledge and how we can use this new type of cryptography to transfer information. All of it right now is in service to asset transfers, but so much more can be built on top of that.
So interoperability is often talked about at the protocol layer, but real performance depends on latency, reliability, and composability. What does good multi-chain infra look like in practice?
Consistency. Like, we shouldn't favor anyone who's building on Ethereum or building on Solana or any other chain. Because there's so many chains right now. Like, we know Ethereum, Solana on the top two. We have a lot of Sui, Injective, Cosmosm, where any developer who's building on that, they don't get that consistent developer experience or builder experience, whatever we call. So to build anything on multi-chain, we should focus on, if you're using our product, the experience should be consistent. So that should be the highest goal, and that's what my team tries to achieve. So if you see, there are a lot of experienced devs in Ethereum ecosystem, and we are onboarding so many on the Solana. But what about other ecosystems? They're also important. So having a consistent developer experience is one of the major goals, which my team tries to follow it.
Yeah, I agree with the developer experience. You want that to be uniform for devs, right? They want the tools that are available to them, they're comfortable with, especially all the infra, right? The oracles, the subgraphs, the RPC nodes, the multisigs, the tokens that they like, the bridges that they like. So we try to offer that. We don't like pick winners ourselves. Like I want everybody to win. I want to integrate like all the different solutions. I think we try to integrate as many as we can, and then we encourage the projects to focus on the front end, to think about how they present it to users, right? Having good documentation, having good tutorials, and then just kind of letting the developers choose, right? Like what stack they want to use to build their dApp.
I'm going to take the other side of that. I think we're not opinionated enough. The approach of let's be agnostic, let's everyone do whatever they want is part of the problem. It's a problem because it means that we don't have any standards. Everyone's sort of just building their own thing. And it's a problem from the user perspective because the user cannot know what security risks or security assumptions they are undertaking. And I think bridging is it's just one example of this, but it's a great example. So let's say I have a asset, let's call it on Ethereum, and now I move that asset to another chain, right? And now some other user owns it because they bought it from me or whatever. Or maybe they maybe they did a rug pull and they got my token. Anyway, they have my token now and they want to move it to some other chain. So we've got like one IOU on one chain, and now they use a different bridge, and we have a second IOU on this chain. And now they maybe move it back to Ethereum, but the token on Ethereum isn't the same token that the original token. It's sort of like an IOU of an IOU. The level of complexity there in terms of wallets, in terms of what developers need to deal with, in terms of the multifarious security assumptions and hidden security assumptions, make building strong UX in the space basically impossible for developers. Makes maintaining security very, very difficult, and makes everything extremely confusing to the users. So I think we need to be opinionated about a lot of things. But one of the things we probably need to be most opinionated about, and as soon as possible, is security assumptions. The big problem with multi-chain, as I see it, is that the entire purpose of our industry is to build ownership, reliable ownership over assets. That means the entire purpose of our industry is security. And it's the one thing that we haven't gotten right. We've got so many different security assumptions with so many different systems. So I think we're now moving from a phase where we're going to see less fragmentation and more consolidation. And I think this consolidation is going to be around security zones.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's an interesting problem too, right? I think people haven't really cared about security in the space for, I'm going to be bold and say, for a long time. Decentralization is not anything people want to talk about anymore. I think a lot of those like OG cypherpunk values have kind of left the space to some extent, or aren't as vocal anymore. And I think you're right. As we start to see a consolidation, security becomes top of mind. I do think, though, whether you're interacting like with a protocol or an asset, it's a responsibility of the developer to make those security decisions in the best interest of the user. And so that's why the architecture that we've built has been really modular and really focuses on having the developer own those contracts, make those decisions, and empower them to design a unified multi-chain experience, because it really is fragmented. But I also do love the competition. I think it's been so good for the industry. I think having so many different interop providers and so many different token standards has really pushed us away from complacency and just being okay with whatever is being given as the first solution. The number of iterations that have happened in even the token transfer frameworks that have been live, like the token standards, the underlying messaging verification, it's all progressed us so much in the last few years. I wouldn't say that interop is solved. I know that that's also a hot narrative on crypto Twitter. I really fundamentally disagree that we're not there yet. But a lot of this competition has paved the way for us to think really critically about how best to secure the multi-chain space.
Love these takes. Execution environments are evolving, from Bitcoin rollups to WASM-based smart contracts. How does your project approach interoperability at the runtime level, and what challenges still remain?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in down here. Challenges remain. It's really tough when there's a new runtime, a new consensus mechanism. Every time that there's a new blockchain that's innovating on that blockchain level, it's really tough for us to be able to expand there quickly. We have to really understand the security assumptions of that network. We have to understand, all the nodes information has to all be open source. Like, we have certain security requirements that have to be met before the Wormhole Guardians feel comfortable expanding to that network. That also requires new contracts being built in new languages. And if we really do want to preserve that unified developer experience, we aim to have the building experience be the same, whether it's EVM, SVM, WASM, this net new thing. And that's really challenging for us. It's something that we're working on optimizing. We support a lot of exotic runtimes, and we're really proud to be able to continue to do that and support innovation. It does take a little bit more time to get us to scale on that front.
I think it's really interesting that you ask about runtime. So we have a completely different approach. We're not trying to be interoperable on the runtime level at all. So the way we treat everything is any execution environment, we reduce the only input we're going to deal with is a proof of compute or a ZK proofs. And so we've been working with RISC-0, with Succinct, and multiple other ZK VM providers to allow developers to write in C++, TypeScript, EVM, Solidity, Rust, and for our system to be agnostic to that. And I think that if we want to create, and I think what we do want to create, is an experience for developers where you build once in a language and in the frameworks that you're already familiar with, and you can serve all users, you need to have all of these different execution environments be able to communicate with each other through a platform or a protocol which is as agnostic to them as the internet itself. The internet does not care if you're using TypeScript or JavaScript or Flash, right? It accepts all comers. So I think we will know that we've won when nobody talks about Web3 developers anymore, because everyone who is building is just a developer, right? We want Web2 developers building on crypto.
Yeah, I think on the runtimers, we build a multi-VM infra. We've deployed a lot of precompiles and unified account systems to help tie it all together. But it definitely breaks the wallet UIs and the explorers and the analytics, which that has to be, that takes time to resolve, getting MetaMask to show multi-chain addresses or using the same derivation path as maybe other wallets use. On the Explorer side, right, being able to show both WASM and EVM transactions in the same Explorer, as opposed to having to have two different Explorers. That's something that we're helping the projects adopt. But I mean, it was the same thing. When rebasing tokens came out, breaks all the UIs. When the Uniswap switched from Uni V2 positions to NFT-based concentrated liquidity positions, broke all the UIs. So it was just consistently breaking UIs, and then this space has to adopt, right, catch up.
We are not that exposed to runtime because we only do verification. Our architecture is very different. We don't push updates. We only do verification of the updates. My answer, to be honest, very much aligned with Wormhole team because we use you guys to send the verification. And we have seen a lot of different, we try to abstract everything, and sometimes we don't have to do something on EVM, but on SUI, if you want to transfer something, any move ecosystem or SUI, you have to split the coin to do the payment of gas and everything. And we try to abstract by ourselves and we do all the execution by ourselves, so as an engineer doesn't have to do. And adding to your point, we don't want to segregate Web2 and Web3 devs, as you said. So, and you said security is also an important part. But who is responsible for the security? We don't want everyone out there, if you're building on any other ecosystem, I don't want you to go and research everything about security and have your own opinion, say, this is the best, I'll build on that. We all have to work together to make it, or market our product, be more secure, and it's easier to everyone digest. Like if I go in the Web2 space, if I have to use Stripe, and I have other options as well, I don't go through all those docs to start using it. The onboarding journey has to be very small, and we have to do all that work to make it secure. So I think we have innovated, I'll say that in a spice take, but we have innovated a lot. Let's start making those products more useful rather than just innovate to an end. So, I've already said my spicy take, so fine.
Well, we're getting there. Why don't we turn up the heat? What is your hottest take on multi-chain infra this week? Why don't we start with Wormhole?
This really shouldn't be a hot take, but unfortunately, it sounds like it is sometimes. Well, it's twofold. One, security matters. Like it feels like it really shouldn't be a conversation, but even when we look at the way that the L2 ecosystem has evolved, I think proving has taken a back step. Nobody's really focusing on that. But I think especially as we become more of a serious industry where institutions like BlackRock and Van Eck are launching funds on chain, has to matter again, right? And there's a lot of responsibility on us as builders today to make sure that that environment that they're building on is safe.
This isn't my hot take, but it's a hot take which I think we should all be aware of, and it's a hot take which has been communicated to me. It's been communicated to me from large financial institutions. So I think a part of the space that most users and most developers in crypto don't see is how institutions are thinking about it. But luckily enough, because I'm in the Bitcoin space, and this is where the vast majority of institutions are, and because I'm building fundamental technologies around self-custody, I get to talk to institutions a lot. And what they have described to me, first of all, I think you need to recognize that the people on that side are not noobs anymore. They haven't been for many years. They're basically us, but got hired by a bank or a hedge fund. And what they've been telling me is that they cannot use any of these systems being built today, because all of these systems being built today, from a practical and from a regulatory perspective, are basically multi-sigs. In other words, if they were to put their funds into these systems, they would be handing over custody to somebody else, and that is a non-qualified custodian, and so they cannot use it. And so really, I think my hot take is, as far as those guys are concerned, everything we've built, and no offense, but everything we've built in the sort of multi-chain interoperability space up until now is basically a multi-sig, and that if we want to bring in vast quantities of real finance instead of gambling, we're going to have to deeply rethink how we're building these systems.
Yeah, I'll just quickly chime in. We do work with a number of institutions as well. BlackRock's BUIDL fund is secured by Wormhole's messaging whenever they choose to move BUIDL cross-chain, Apollo ACRED, Hamilton Lane. There's a lot of institutions that are coming on chain, and I think there is a difference between maintaining those assets on their balance sheet versus building on it. And I think that distinction is really interesting because they do feel very comfortable custodying it themselves. They have no problem deploying contracts that they own and they maintain. And to some extent, I do think that they like the tooling that's being built, but I agree, it's still long strides away before we really move towards that globalization of DeFi that we were hoping for.
I think in my hot take is that, well, in terms of integrations, right, we integrate wallets, cool, get listed. Yield aggregators, DEX aggregators, I aggregate you, you aggregate me, it's cool. But when it comes to interoperability and bridges, I've not seen as much vendor lock-in as I have when it comes to bridges interoperability. I have to pick and choose which provider we're going to use for our chain for liquidity and for canonicity. Which is the canonical USDC, which is the liquidity of the Bitcoin that we're going to give. And there's not really ways to swap from one to the other. You do kind of have to choose. And so I think that the reason we have so many different competing standards, and I think it's good to have competition, but also we have so many competing standards because everyone that has a standard wants their standard to be the one to rule them all, and that conflicts with other standards that are out there. So I think if we like take a step back and we look at that and we think about how to build like a more resilient infrastructure where the things are interoperable with each other. I agree with the security. I think that like that is the objective measure, is that like, is it secure? If it's not, then you shouldn't get to like infect others with it. But I do think that like there are different approaches that I would consider at the same playing field in terms of like, you know, bridges and interoperability. And we don't know. We don't know which is the best way yet.
I'll change my hot take. I'm always like in favor of building better experiences and everything. But now I think it's a time that we start building more fault-tolerant infrastructure. So one of the biggest thing I've seen that might be like institutions not coming to Web3, or they are coming slowly because we see a lot of failures. Like we build our products and we try to ship faster to be in the competitive space, and we test it on like hundreds, thousands of users. But as soon as the traffic comes, a lot of protocols, a lot of breaks. And we don't put a lot of effort in building a fault-tolerant infrastructure. So you guys are innovating a lot. I agree, we shouldn't stop that, but we shouldn't sail so fast that we forget where we. I don't know, there's no metaphor for that, but fine. Like, we should focus on our ship as well, that it shouldn't sink in a storm. I just made that up, sorry.
No, it's good.
Love these hot takes. Why don't we end with something that's a little bit more future-looking? Why don't we do a 60-second elevator pitch on an integration, feature, upgrade that's either shipped or coming soon that you're excited about?
Sure, I'll start. Since I have said a lot about data, prices, data, I'll keep that. I'll be in data again. So a lot of folks use us, a lot. Like, I don't know the number now. So we are bringing out a new way to consume our prices, more permission, more secure, safe, like secure, and more fault tolerant. That's why Hot Tech came in. So within a month, you'll see, if you guys are using Pit, you'll see a new way to use Pit. You'll be able to trust us more, which you do already. And not more I can say about it, but it's way, no other Oracle has done this, what we are about to do now.
We have our mainnet campaign coming up, and so I've been working very closely with our vaults and aggregators and structured products to create like these these strategies for people to deposit into, and I think that's going to be really appealing for people that want to benefit from yield, but also not be very actively managed. And the yield is money market yield, T-bill yield, Bitcoin yield, right, lending yield, perps yield. So we're really trying to think about like what's stable and what's sustainable, and not just like token inflation or like LRTs. And we're excited for like anyone that wants to like join and build or participate, and happy to have those conversations with them.
Later this month, we're going to be releasing the latest in a series of critical white papers around the infrastructure that we're building. And it's going to explain something that we were able to demonstrate for the first time on mainnet last week, which was the ability to create programmable Bitcoin, kind of like wrapped ETH on Ethereum, but wrapped Bitcoin on the Bitcoin chain. And then also allow that to interact with smart contracts from other chains. So we're going to be putting out a white paper describing how we did that. And I know that there's already been sort of quite a lot of excitement about developers wanting to use this, and this is going to be the kickoff opportunity for developers to begin playing around with that.
I feel like I was fear-mongering a little bit, so I'll pitch something fun. Recently, the NTT Launchpad was announced. If you want to launch a token on one chain, if you want to launch a token on 10 chains, make sure that they're all interoperable. If you check out nttlaunchpad.com, you can do that in just under a minute. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of Katya tokens on testnet, NFA, but if I can do it, so can you. Thanks.
Awesome. That's it for the panel on multi-chain infra. Appreciate you guys coming on. Thank you for the wonderful panelists.